What, are you saying I should record this?
No, I am. I'm doing it for you. So I'll share it with you
cool.
when we're done. So,
All
all
right.
right.
Cool.
So let's just recap real quick, and to go over this and take notes. So point number one, the very important point is that how you relate and connect and associate, right? So those three terms: relate, connect, and associate. How you relate.
Sorry, you said connect. No, connect what and associate?
I'm going to say how you relate,
Yes,
connect,
how.
and associate the unordinary that you experience is profoundly important.
Okay, sorry. So I just missed the first word.
It's
so
how.
How do you?
It's not how do you. It's how you relate and associate the unordinary that you experience is important. That's all I'm saying. It's how you connect to it that's important. Right?
Okay.
So the association that you attach, that you connect to your experiences are profoundly important. In other words, if you experience something unusual and you think, well, it's unusual, it must be bad, which a lot of people think, they just automatically think the unusual must be bad. And that association puts a slant onto things, and an association which can severely screw you up. That's the whole point of R.D. Laing's book. That he said the experiences were the same, but how people associated and came to believe what it meant in terms of good or bad, right or wrong, this is what mattered. Right. So having the same experience, the one person ended up completely screwed up and depressed and suicidal, and the other person thought it was a blessing and a gift and it was awesome. So it's all about the association, right? The things in themselves are not positive or negative either way. You determine that through how you associate it. So that was the first point. Very powerful point. Okay. So if you have time, it's a good little book to read. It's very short and it's 2 little books, and I believe it's The Politics of Experience and The Birds of Paradise.
Okay, I will look for those.
Yeah, but you can just look up R.D. Laing. There's another book by Aldous Huxley. It's also a very short little book with 2 little books inside one. They both were originally published by Penguin. So I tend to mix those 2 up because they just happen to be that I read them at the same token. But I'm pretty sure that's the right angle. But if you look up R.D. Laing, that should come up. Very short little book. And I said it's 2 books in one. 2 very short little books in one. Okay. It's just interesting reading. It's very interesting reading. All right.
It's called Politics of?
The Politics of Experience.
Experience, okay.
The Politics of Experience. That's the one. It's got 2. It's 2 books in one, and the other one is The Birds of Paradise.
Birds of Paradise, yeah.
Birds of Paradise. All right. So 2 cool little books. And they 2 short books put into one, and it's still a short book. So it's very cool though. But it's very radically different and very transformative, and it's a very, very, very undervalued book. Yes, it is a classic. That's how I came to read it, but it's very undervalued at how phenomenally transformative it is. All right. Right. So,
sorry, Sile.
No, Sil, like is in silver. The name, not Sile. Sil.
Sil.
Yeah, Sil, like in silver. Yeah. No worries. It's
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Sorry about that.
No problem. You going to ask?
Yes, I was saying the Aldous Huxley book. What is that one called?
That was actually, it's related. That's why it sticks in my mind. And I believe one of them is called Heaven and Hell, and I forget the name of the other title. Right. But if you put in Aldous Huxley mescaline, it will come up. Now, it's somewhat related because he deliberately takes mescaline, and he writes down his experience of what happens when he takes mescaline. So it's somewhat related, right? So he goes on this big, profound trip. And he was kind of one of the first to actually write this out in detail. And it was very transformative. It was a big deal at the time. It's a pretty cool book. But again, I'm pretty sure there's plenty others that have done it. But in the time that he did it, since he was kind of the first and was in isolation, it wasn't influenced by much else. And in that sense, it's very useful. So if you look up Aldous Huxley mescaline, I'm pretty sure it will come right up. Again, a short little book with 2 stories in one, 2 titles in one. So that's why they're associated to me. And they happen to be somewhat related as well. So it's pretty cool.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, Aldous Huxley made some effort to be earnest and to think things through and to be somewhat thorough. So it's not a bad book. It's a pretty good read as well. It's very interesting. All right.
All
So
right.
so I want to say something in that's very, very pertinent and important in two issues. One, when it comes, it connects to ego, and the other, it comes to this association, how to balance things out with associations and what you associate your unusualness with. All right. So, in the same way as those people came to be either suicidal, depressed, or feel blessed and that they are having the best thing ever, right? And they just thought this is magical. The difference, the same experience, were interpreted differently. That same behavior can go outward in that you can cue people. And when I say cue here, I mean it in the sense like that you give a signal and this prompts people to behave in a certain way. You know, like an actor gets a cue and then they do whatever they need to do. But I don't mean it that you're cueing people to behave falsely like an actor. I simply mean it a cueing in the sense of a prompt that stimulates people to behave in a certain way, right? So here's the point that I'm mentioning. If you've probably seen it, for instance, at a party, right? You get some party's all dead, nothing's going on, and suddenly somebody comes into the party and they're all enthusiastic and they're the life of the party and they got energy. Their energy, and they don't let the mood of who's there already, they don't let that affect them. They just carry on as if the party's great, and suddenly the mood in the party changes. They've cued a change in behavior, in other words, right?
Okay.
You following me what I mean by cueing?
Yeah.
And the reverse could happen too. You could have a great party and let's say the host of the party is kind of feeling down. They've had a fight with their bae and all of a sudden the party just collapses. They cue that the party is crap, right? And then people come to believe the party is crap even though objectively it's the same party. So what I'm trying to say is that you personally have a profound ability to cue how people treat you and relate to you and how their behavior is when it comes to you. Now, this is a very big deal and it's quite a big complex deal. I'm not going to go into all of it because it will be too much, but I just want you to be aware of it. In other words, if you think that like those people who had those experiences, I'm not saying that you have the same experiences, I'm just using for example. If you believe like some of those people did that there's something wrong with you and you've been affected by the devil or whatever, you are going to cue people who are otherwise neutral and don't care one way or the other about your experiences. You are going to cue them to treat you as if it's a bad thing and you are crazy and it's a big mess, right? So you could, in other words, create the very thing that you don't want to do. In other words, it's the same logic as saying victims invite aggression. If you have a victim mindset, you're going to get the bullies come and pick on you. You're going to cue them, in other words, to pick on you, right? You with me?
Yeah, totally get you.
Okay, so that same point when it comes to your unusualness, and please write this down. That's why I wanted you to take the notes. Please write down for me. I am not usual. I am not ordinary. And I mean you, not me. Please write that down. Because that's true, right? You aren't ordinary. You aren't usual, correct? And I don't mean ordinary as better or worse, simply a fact of difference. Okay? Yeah, I thought you may have lost the connection. It's okay. When you do, this is for the recording. If you lose the connection ever, simply just rejoin the meeting. It reestablishes the connection. So it's very useful in that sense. No worries. There you go. There you go.
Sorry,
no problem.
I had to buy more data.
Right. All right. Sorry about that. You know what? Turn off the video then if it makes a difference. It's not a problem. I mean, I like to have the video on also so I can see when you're taking notes. You know what I mean? Then I can
No.
pause while you're taking the note, and it's very handy. But by all means, put it off. It's no problem. Just say when you're done, because I'll wait till you're done. It's very important
No,
that pause, because it allows for emphasis, and emphasis is a big part of what I do. So.
Okay. It's fine. I bought a lot of data now, so
Okay.
it should last.
Okay.
So
Okay.
go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then the other thing is just tilt your camera so that it points a little bit down. It's pointing kind of too much to the ceiling. There you go. Then I can see when you're looking down. You see what I mean? Otherwise, I'll just see the top of your head.
All right, cool.
All right. Very cool. So you wrote down. Why I wanted you to use the video. I was saying because it allows me to see when you're taking the note, and the note's so important. So did you write down, I am not ordinary, I am not usual? And I mean you, not me. Did you write that down?
Sorry, I didn't.
Please,
can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. So please write down for me. Write down.
I can't hear your voice.
Oh.
See what happened? Okay, you're back.
Okay.
You're back. It's
Okay.
fine.
So please write down for me. Write down, I am not ordinary. And I mean you not ordinary, but I want you to write it in first person. I am not ordinary. Okay. I am not usual. Write those two down for me in your notes. Very important.
I'm not ordinary.
And I am not usual.
Okay. I've done that.
And that's true, right? And I don't mean it in the sense of better or worse or special or any such crap. No, I simply mean it as a fact of reality, right?
Yeah.
It's just true. That's all. We're just being self-honest here. There's no better or worse, no ego involved. It's just simply true. Pretty much everybody's different in some way, right? I very seldom meet ordinary people. Everybody's different in some way. But it's very important to understand that you are different. Right? It's very important to understand. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems of trying to be normal and usual and all of this. And you're not. So you can't try and be normal and usual because you're not. It's not going to work, right? It doesn't work for pretty much anybody. There are a few exceptions, but they're actually the exceptions. So the norm is to be different and unusual. It's very interesting. Right? But it's very important to understand that so you have some way to relate, to understand that, hey, I am different. I have things that are different in me. I experience the world differently, and I have to relate to that and adjust to it and adapt as appropriate, right? So that appropriateness is a very, very powerful conception, and it's huge. It's a big deal. It's the apex of the A+ philosophy, which is what's underlying everything that I'm sharing with you. It's a big, huge, massive big deal. Cool. All right. So, then what was the other thing we said before? I wanted to recap.
So, okay, you were talking about cues.
Right, about cueing. Yes, right. Yeah. So you have to know and be aware. Just write down that term cueing. That's it. Just write down cueing. You'll know what it means. In other words, you can affect how people respond to you and relate to you and behave towards you and how you affect them. And that's a very powerful understanding. It's kind of incomprehensible to realize that people can completely change their behavior depending on how you cue them to relate to you. I used to see kids get hidings at school. When I went to school, yes, they still gave canings, right? And you know probably in the same thing, there were some kids that used to get hidings every day, right?
Yeah.
They believed they were cued. People somewhere along the line, their parents, the teachers said to them, you're a screw up, you're a fuck up, and all of this stuff, right? And they came to believe it. And they behaved according to that conception, that idea of themselves that others had. In other words, they did what they think a fuck up should do and came to adopt that as how they should be. It is incomprehensible in its craziness, but it's a reality. It's unbelievable how this is. If you pay attention, you'll see how this applies. So that's why I wanted you to also write down, I am not usual or I am unusual and I am different. Either way, right? It's very powerful to change that inner conception so that you don't inadvertently conform to somebody else's idea of how to be. Because those kids at school, they were doing things because they think they should do it. And should to me and to us, Olivia and I, who do what we do, should is an evil word. It's the root of so much bloody problems. So that cueing is to unhook from should and other people's ideas of what is normal, what is good, what isn't, what's beneficial, what's useful. I don't care about right or wrong. I care about appropriateness. And when you write down that word, appropriateness, it is exceedingly powerful. Now, especially since you come from that Catholic thing, appropriateness does not mean proper. Okay? Very big difference, right? So and I have a feeling you understand what appropriateness is and that it's separate from proper. Appropriateness depends, in other words, on context and upon your goals and desires and your intent, right? So in other words, what's appropriate in one situation, right? The exact opposite behavior can be appropriate in another, right? If I go to a funeral or I go to a wedding, different behavior is appropriate, okay? However, let's assume I want to be a hooligan. That's my intent. For me to go and be like laugh at the funeral, well, okay, that might be appropriate because that's what I'm trying to do, right? That's why it's not connected to proper, all right? It all depends on what you're trying to do. All right. So this is very important to understand appropriateness and to make sure that you, Tanaka, that you are the determinant of what is appropriate to you. No one else. Only you can determine that, right? That's very important to understand.
Yes.
Because if you do not make that effort to determine what's appropriate for you, you will never ever have independence of being, and that's where people get lost. They get lost because they don't have independence of being. So write that down also for me. Independence of being with hyphens and with independence and being both capitalized. It's a power conception. I'm sharing with you what I do in our Greater Life Change program. We have an entire big program that does this. It's called the Way of Impeccability Life Change Program. It's a big deal. So I'm just sharing you with some of that. That's why on some of the things, there's so much more to it. As I was saying earlier, it's part of that program. So it's kind of beyond the scope sometimes,
Okay.
But I'm just saying, in terms of the mentoring, typically the mentoring deals with kind of somewhat superficial stuff for most people. They got a problem with the boyfriend or the girlfriend or the parents or, whatever. And it's just, or the work or the boss. And it's typically that sort of stuff. And it's very easy to just kind of give a bit of guidance. And usually it's more reassurance than anything else that's involved. But your particular situation here, this is a much deeper issue and it goes to a much bigger deal. All right. So the other thing I wanted to point out and to make a note of, that feeling of things being perfect, that is connected to awareness. I'm recapping now, right? And that everything, the point of life, the point of the universe, the meaning of life, if you want to call it, it is precisely that, the development and enhancement of awareness. It's all about awareness. And it's important to know and understand that awareness has to be acquired by oneself. You can't give somebody awareness because that by definition then would be a program, right?
Yeah.
Then you'd be a robot. All right. So it's very important to make a note of that. However you write that down, it's very important to understand this. It's vitally critical.
Yes.
And it's something the religions do not understand.
Yeah, unfortunately.
All of them, they don't get this. And people struggle, say, but why can't I get the answers from God? That's why. Why doesn't God speak to me directly? That's exactly why. If God were to speak to you directly and you truly believed in God, whichever one you think it is, you would have to do what they say because, well, it's God saying it. God can't give you a suggestion. If God thinks this is a good idea, I kind of have to do it. It would automatically be a command, whatever God says to you. It can't be helped just because of who God is, correct?
Yes.
So therefore, you would feel like you'd have to do it. And if you feel like you have to do it, then it becomes programming and you become a robot. So you have to learn things for yourself, for the awareness to be real and to be your own so that you're not a robot. Now, suddenly it all starts to make sense, right? The whole idea of the world being this profound magical school for the development and enhancement of awareness, it all starts to fall into place. That's why when you feel that everything is perfect, it is, but it's perfect because it's good in the context of developing awareness, not nice in the context of indulgence. And that's what people most think when they think of perfect. They think, oh, I'm just going to get everything I want and, I'd be all indulged. No, that's not what the end goal is, because you could have, for instance, look at the old Greek gods, right? They had power and they lived in a fluid universe and they were gods. But it was a mess. It was a complete screw up, right? And they weren't particularly happy. They were always having these infights, and they were jealous and spiteful and started wars, and it was all about ego. In other words, it was a mess. And they didn't know how to actually use that power because they had no underlying fundamentals and their awareness was missing, right? So that's why it's important to understand why you have to learn first and develop your awareness before you can actually get to anything. And why perfection isn't about indulgence, but perfection is about the school, about the learning, right? Now, the consequence of that is if we start to look at life itself, look at whatever happens in your life, and you start to assume, wait a second, you know what? This stuff happened. And if I take this assumption that the world is a perfect school, then all the stuff, especially something that happens that's quite transformative or a big deal, or something that's significant in your life, like for instance ending up in the hospital those times, you have to assume that this is happening with some kind of good reason involved, and that good reason is development and enhancement of your awareness. So if you go back to those experiences and you've already done this, and you look specifically with deliberate intent, you insist on extracting the more out of it, the learning out of it, in other words, the awareness that comes from it. Wow, now suddenly you're going to see all sorts of magic involved, right? All sorts of wonderfulness and awesomeness. Yes?
Yes.
All right. So that's very important to understand that we have to deliberately make that effort to extract the goodness out of things. And that good is not necessarily nice. So write that down also, please.
Okay.
Right. I mean, good is not always nice, correct?
That's true.
And if you have to choose between good and nice, you have to always choose good first, right? All right. So same thing for your children, and same thing when it comes to being a God's children. That God, that deity, the spirit, whatever, they always have to choose good before nice. However, so if we look at the perfectness of the way things are set up, though, and if you watch and observe people, what happens when they don't learn their lessons? The first time they say, hey, you know what? The universe comes and creates a situation for you to say, pay attention. Otherwise, this is going to come and it's not going to work out so good. And it gets a little bit more stern. The next time you maybe get a clip across the ear, and eventually you get a kick upside the ass, and then eventually it really comes crashing down on you. It says, hey, learn, pay attention. You're not getting this. There's something you need to learn here, right? So when you take that incident of ending up in the hospital, whatever you call it, what is the term that you use for it? I just want to use your term.
The term of what? Of ending up in the hospital?
Yeah. When you talk to yourself about it, what do you say? Do you say when I ended up in the hospital, or my this, or whatever?
But I think the name I've always liked for it is the hero's journey.
Okay. Perfect. Yes. So when you experienced your hero's journey, right? What I recommend doing, and what I very, very, very strongly recommend, is that you make a list of points that you were forced to learn. Not what you did learn, what you were forced to learn. There's a big difference. All right. So, for instance, if you end up in the hospital, for argument's sake, you're forced to deal with being in an environment where you are not completely in control, right? That's just one thing. You may be forced to eat bad food, but that we won't worry about such things. But still, it's an then of tolerance. I'm just saying for argument's sake, right? You're forced to learn patience. You're forced to live to change your perspective. You're forced to deal with not being in control of your life, right? Very big issues you're forced to learn. So you must write it down. Don't just think it through. Absolutely have to write it down. Make a list, write it down of what you were forced to learn in that situation, in those incidents of your hero's journey, because that's precisely the point of the hero's journey. When the hero undergoes the challenges and struggles, the story does not move if the hero does not come to some sort of resolution and doesn't learn. Correct? The story just stops there. It crashes. And if the hero doesn't learn the first time, well, he has to repeat it until he does.
That makes sense.
Yes. Now, watch real quickly. Watch people with relationships, right? And people that date. And you'll see they end up dating the same person, the same type of person over and over again. And they'll even say, you know what? I don't learn my lesson. I keep dating the same jerks.
Yeah.
There you have it. Everybody knows this. This is how it works. The moment they figure out what exactly that they are needing to learn in terms of awareness, then it changes and they start dating who is more appropriate for them. But the point of everything is it's there for you to learn. And if you don't learn, it's going to repeat. And sometimes it gets worse. You can watch this with people like with have motorcycle accidents. I know in South Africa, I don't know if it's still the same, but at one time it used to be huge. Everybody was in a motorcycle accident, right?
Yeah.
You ask them, you go through their history of accidents. You say, well, what happened before they end up in the hospital? Say, what was the accident you had before this? And they'll always tell you, yes, I had this little accident, but it wasn't so bad, or I got lucky and I just missed getting killed. And you go back and back and back, and always it started with some small little minor thing where they just fell off the bike when they first started to drive and like was no big deal at all. And they never learned their bloody lesson. So it keeps repeating until they end up in the bloody hospital. So
Yeah.
So the universe sets it up. If you don't learn, it makes things progressively worse until you do learn your lesson. Because now think of it, if you were to design the system of life, the world, for yourself, and you design it in the context of awareness and developing and growing your own awareness, how would you design the system? You'd put in a system of rewards and punishments, essentially, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it would be, I don't know, sort of like raising a child, I guess.
Precisely.
So,
if you don't learn, there's consequences to not learning. It's going to put more pressure on you to learn. You can't force them to learn, but you can kind of help things along to say, fine, you don't want to learn, it's going to be really difficult for you. If you do like learning and you enjoy learning, then it's going to be magical. And that's the key point. That's what living in attunement is all about. It is to develop a way of living that is completely in harmony with this entire system, with this balance. And then life becomes truly magical and wonderful. And all those positive superlatives that you said earlier, I mean, that's really living the way, to me, life is designed. And how, if you have any kind of faith, how can it not be a magical, wonderful universe, life, world that we live in? Right? So that's why I said the issue involved here, underlying, it's O ye of little faith. Almost all the established religions, their great flaw is that they do not believe enough. If you're going to believe in a deity or a god or spirit or whatever as having some kind of influence over the world and the universe, you have to believe, you absolutely have to believe that things are perfect. There's no other way it can be. It is in what context that appropriateness applies, right? It's appropriate because we are children that need to learn. We're lifelong children. That's it, relative to the universe and to whatever deity. Correct? All right. So I want to leave it there because otherwise we'll be on this for very long. And, I don't mind, but I just want to say that that's a good point to end on, to have that realization that, if you just take this one simple concept that we're discussing, that's all about awareness. It is completely and radically transformative in many consequences, the biggest one of which is that you realize that who you are and what you experience is just part of the system, and that's the way life works, and life is easy after that. And now you don't have to feel that there's something odd, something wrong with you, something troubling. And at the same token, it doesn't make you special either. And that's part of what I assume might have been the problem beginning. You started to feel this wonderfulness, this awesomeness, this fantasticness. And then it may have gotten a bit of an ego thing, like I'm special. And then the universe came and said, no, that's got to go. And it came and gave you a smack because you related to it from an ego point of view, not from an appreciation point of view. Yes?
Yeah, that's true.
All right. So, I mean, I just call a spade, make no difference. I'm just going to be direct about stuff. There's no secrets as far as I'm concerned, or nothing that we cannot speak about ever. And there's no judgments involved. It is what it is. Yes, ego is something we're all got to deal with, and we just got to be real about it. You know what I mean? It's not anything to be embarrassed or ashamed about. We're all knuckleheads, in other words, and nincompoops. That's it, as far as I'm concerned. It's just a matter of degree. And you know what? Relative to the universe, how much more or less I'm a knucklehead to somebody else, it's like saying, well, okay, I got $10 and you got 11, and like now suddenly, you know what, you're very rich and I'm poor. I mean, compared to the trillions of dollars in the world, it's ridiculous to kind of compare that difference, right? So it's the same way with when it comes to nincompoopness and knuckleheadedness. Relative difference is absolutely irrelevant. It's fractional, right? So it's very important to understand this. So that's why, I don't care about stuff like that. Furthermore, I have to say just also that, we do have that Way of Impeccability Life Change program. It's a big deal, and it's what we do. And when I say there's more behind what I say, that's what I'm talking about. I just got to put it out there so that you know what's going on. I can't not say
Okay.
that, right? So,
Yeah.
because for some people, yes, like I said, mentoring is something that casually helps them out. But if complete and utter life change is something that's fundamentally, radically important to you and essential, and you need assistance with that, that is what we do, right? So it's a very comprehensive thing. It's a very big deal. So,
So where is the Life Change program?
that's online that we do that. I mean, I can share a link with you. I'll put it in Facebook rather, because then this chat disappears once we end the session. So I'll put that link in Facebook for you.
Okay, all right. Then yeah,
Right.
then
Where
I'll check
you
it
can
out.
kind of see what the curriculum is all about and get an idea. Now, it is a ridiculously comprehensive program, and doesn't matter how nicely I put the curriculum or describe what it's about, it's not nearly enough. All right. So let me just, since you are interested in there, let me just I'll put it when we're done. Let me just add a bit more. It is an
Mm-hmm.
online program, right? And in the online program, the way it works is they're online sessions where you listen and read some stuff that we put out there, and there's
Mm-hmm.
tasks that you do and you put together. But that's not the program. It is merely a mechanism to get things going and to connect to where you are at, how you connect to things, how you relate to things, and to establish what's of importance to you, and very particularly what's pertinent and relevant to you. So the bulk of the program takes place in live interactive sessions exactly like this, right? But you're now taking what the content was and you come back and you give a takeaway on it. And the whole takeaway philosophy is there's a lot that goes on. It's not just a simple thing of the usual takeaway. There's a lot more to it. Anyway, the point of that is it then gives us from our side an indication of where you're at, how you're understanding things, and it allows you to check and test your understanding, because unless you do that, you may believe you understand, but you won't know for sure, correct?
Yeah.
No, it's very important to check and test that understanding. All right. So that lets us know where you're at. And at the same time, what inevitably happens is when we start talking about and they give me feedback, they relate back on what it is that they perceive the online session to mean to them, inevitably stuff comes up in their life. So they may be talking about, let's say the session is about intent, like the very first one's all about intent. They'll start to
Mm-hmm.
come up with something about their mother, just for argument's sake. It
Mm-hmm.
seems unconnected, but it's an unresolved something that's very pertinent and needs to be dealt with. And it's always some kind of a connectivity, because absolutely everything is connected. And that's why I like my background, because it's all connected like this, right? And that point down there, that's appropriateness and awareness, right? It's the triangle: appropriateness at the top and awareness and attunement in the other part of the triangle. That's the basis for everything. And then there's a fourth point at the bottom, like a pyramid, and that's application. So those four, it's why it's called the A plus philosophy, because of those A plus terms. But my point is
Okay.
that I just want to understand that this program isn't what's online. It is that's a very small fraction of the entirety that interacts. Right. So we have these kind of a live takeaway session on that content, and then stuff that's pertinent to you and particularly in your life. We apply the way of living, which in the program is called the Way of Impeccability, because that's the underlying basis. So let me just put this in a little bit more context for you. Let's say you take those substances again and you go on your trip. Without the underpinnings of impeccability, as you've discovered, it is all
Mhm.
too easy to get lost.
Yeah.
We need solid foundations, and those foundations is exactly what the Way of Impeccability is. So, in other words, this is something that's got nothing to do with beliefs. For instance, like patience. Patience is not a belief. It's a
Yeah.
self-evident sensibility. Patience is useful regardless of whatever bloody situation is, whatever life you're in. This life, the afterlife, you go play games, any reality you experience. Patience is a very valuable tool to have in your arsenal of tools, correct?
Mhm.
Same thing with diligence, same thing with impeccability, same thing with honesty and discernment. And there's a whole host of these things. That is what the program is all about. It is developing those fundamentals. And one of the key points, and make a note for this, please,
Okay.
belief is not required.
All right.
That's very, very important, because this is something that we do that is very radically different. In technology, they always talk about disruptive technology, right? And that's what people look for when they try and invest in technology. What's the new disruptive technology? Well, that belief not required when it comes to self-improvement and self-awareness and life change in particular, and changing your way of being. That concept of belief not required is radically transformative. It is massively disruptive. We don't teach anything. We don't like that term at all. We share what is self-evidently sensible to you. We, in other words, connect you to what you believe is valuable and important, not what I believe. So we make the obvious. We make the obvious obvious. That's our skill. That's where our expertise lies, in making the obvious obvious. Now you might say, well, what the hell do I need to learn the obvious for? Because the obvious is not obvious until it's obvious. Correct?
Yeah, so that's true. Yeah.
Exactly. So all that I said about the point and purpose of the universe, the meaning of life, which a lot of people think, oh, the meaning of life, it's this big question, it's unanswerable. Now, bullshit, there's a lot of reasons for the meaning of life. It's a very simple question to answer, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is that in this context of how we're using it, it is radically transformative. And it is, when I shared it with you, when you think about it and you think it through, especially, and we emphasize this, think it through to the end, then suddenly it becomes self-evident, right? You don't have to believe me when it comes to the point of the universe being awareness. All you have to do is take that idea as a hypothesis and go and test it, and just look at life from that perspective. And pretty soon you say, wow, when I look at life this way, it all makes sense. And suddenly, oh, now I say, yes, you already felt that sense of it. You felt it in that feeling of perfection. So something in you already connected to that. Now simply you have an explanation for that feeling. That's all I provided, right? You don't have to believe me. You can think it through for yourself and it makes sense. Okay, it makes sense to you. Not because I say so, but because you believe it to be so and think it to be so, and it's self-evident, right? That's the key. So this is a very big deal that we focus on self-evident sensibility. Very, very important.
Yeah, I like the idea. It's good.
It's very powerful. Now, you like these alternative things, right? And we spoke it in a little bit in terms of Christian terminology. We'll bring in some Buddhist terminology and other stuff too. I like the variety of it, but because some of it is useful and you already have a familiarity with it, so I use it as a tool. But most of it is stuff that takes those understandings and conceptions and extends it somewhere. Because of that, thinking things through to the end. Right. So a lot of things, for instance, Buddhism, right? You take it all about desire. It's very problematic, this issue of desire, because a lot of people think to have desires is bad, right? And it's why appropriateness is the apex of the underlying philosophy. It's because that entire understanding of appropriateness, it's not that desire is bad and unwanted. It's that inappropriate desire is what's the problem, right? Because the desire for enlightenment, of course, the desire to be a Buddha, which is what Buddha was teaching you, his entire philosophy, and he's not a religion, it's a philosophy originally. It became religions, yes, but what he taught is a philosophy, not a religion. His philosophy said, you too, the whole point of what I am sharing with you is that you need to set yourself on the path of becoming a Buddha. That's the objective of Buddhism, of what he shared, right? So that's a desire to be a Buddha, but you must be a Buddha for appropriate reasons and not because you want to do it for ego reasons or to be important or all this kind of crap, right? So it's appropriate desire that's the issue, and what he said in the Four Noble Truths, it's about inappropriate desire, right? All right. So just to put things into context, I'm just trying to say that what I bring to the table, and Olivia and I, what we share, it's not casual in the least. I mean, it's a very profound, serious business, and it takes a lot of these things because we're aware of them, and it takes them to the end, and it resolves them. Resolves those problems, like that issue with desire, which is very problematic for people studying Buddhism. They can't overcome that. They really struggle. Yeah, but how can I get rid of desire? Like, makes no sense to them, right? They say, but I have to have some desire. So they really struggle with this, and that's why it's inappropriate desire that's the issue, not desire itself. Yeah, and that's understanding appropriateness, in other words. is very key.
Yes.
When we have any kind of problem, just to leave you with this as a tool that you can use in your daily life, because awareness, appropriateness, attunement, all of it, it's got to connect in application. Without application, as you'll hear me say 1,000 times, it's all meaningless. And write that down, please. Without
Yeah. All right.
application, without application,
Good.
it's all meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that over and over. It's very important, and that's the problem with most of the teachings out there. They aren't geared towards practical application. Yes, people see it and they understand and it makes sense, but it makes sense to the mind without putting it into application and having your body be behind it and having it fully incorporated right in your body, in yourself. Without that, it doesn't become anything. It's of no use. For instance, you see all the memes on the internet, right, on Facebook. Trillions of memes, and the wisdom memes. And they share some truly vital, profound, magical wisdom point. And it really is. How much actual difference do those memes make to people's lives?
Wouldn't that depend on whether the people applied the
Precisely.
memes on?
Precisely. In general, though, it makes bugger all difference to people's lives. They see the meme and they'll put all comments and likes and wow, this is fantastic. This connected to me so much. I think this is why, blah, blah, blah. And yet tomorrow, it's the next meme again. And who are those people? They are still the same as what they've been since before the meme. It's actually made no bloody difference whatsoever, right? Bugger all. So that's the point. Without application, it's all meaningless. We have to be very, very aware that intellectual memory knowledge and understanding, for instance, in a limited way, it's limited.
Yes.
We can believe we know, but don't really know. So we have to prove to ourselves through application that we actually really do know this. In other words, it's the same thing as seeing a meme or instructions on riding a bicycle and you read them. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, I know how to ride a bicycle now. Yeah, okay, go and try it. Right? So, so understanding is not the same as application. So it's very important to realize that.
Okay.
Very, very important. Very critical. But I do want to say, Tanaka, that yes, I don't mean to always talk so much, but I've got some limited time here, and I want to share a lot and get you understanding the fullness of the paradigm from which I'm operating. I'm not coming at things casually, right? So there's a lot underlying what I'm saying. It isn't very much not casual at all. And secondly is that, yes, as we go along, I will hear from you more, but I have to establish that baseline that we're operating from, the context, the paradigm that I'm coming from. Very important. Yeah. Yeah. And also that I do appreciate your understanding and awareness. You grasp what I'm saying, like right away. It's no problem. So that's really helpful.
All right, yeah, that
where did you go to school, by the way? I'm just curious because you're talking about accents, and your accent doesn't sound very typically South African.
I'm not South African at all. I am Zimbabwean, actually.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Okay, well, I saw on your when you friended me, I saw that you in Cape Town and that you graduated there and lived there, and so I just figured that you were in Cape Town. But okay.
Oh yes, that's where I went for university.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's where I actually got both my episodes. But I'm originally Zimbabwean.
From Zimbabwe. Okay. Brilliant. Yeah. All right. That's cool to know. Yeah, that University of Cape Town, it's a really beautiful campus, or at least it used to be. I don't know if it still is, but I'm assuming so, right?
Yeah, it's still amazing.
Yeah. It's Cape Town, the really awesome place. Very nice. Very awesome city. Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
I'm gonna go to sleep now because I have to wake up early.
Yes.
But,
okay.
Yeah.
So going forward, that's okay. That's why I'm cautious with these things. They tend to go on long. It seems quick, but we've been going for quite a while. But here's the thing I want to say real quick. So going forward, when something comes up in you, something that you think that's on your mind, in your heart, or perspective you want to share, or just something that as share it as a post in the group, like you did that other one, and then whatever it is that's going on, then I'll respond to that. If need be, we'll do a Zoom session again. All right?
Okay. All right.
I'll put the link to the program, the Life Change program. I'll put the link as a post in the group, actually.
Yeah, so that we can
always find it. And you can always find it, because you can search the posts in the group. So, all right, Tanaka, brilliant, man, brilliant.
Okay, so take care.
You too, man. You too. Sleep well.
All right.
Bye-bye.